Hey everyone, you ever wonder what our resurrected bodies will be like? Well, it's hard to say because we only have one example, Jesus. Listen to this account from the end of the Gospel of Luke. While the disciples were still talking about all this, Jesus himself stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your mind? Look at my hands and my feet. It is me. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." When he said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they were still not believing because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything to eat?" They gave him a piece of fish, and he took it and ate in their presence. So if you know this, see in this story, if you know other stories, Jesus' resurrected body is both like ours and not like ours. Right? In that story, in the Gospel of John, he seems to just appear behind locked doors suddenly. Or earlier in the Gospel of Luke, he appears to some disciples on the road, and somehow they can't recognize it's Jesus until he allows them to. And so it seems like the resurrection body is totally different. And as Paul talks about it in 1 Corinthians, it's imperishable and incorruptible. And yet at the same time, Jesus is very clear there that I'm not a ghost, right? As we talked about yesterday, the resurrection body is not about being disembodied, right? It's still a body. It's just different. And so he's asked for something to eat. He can still eat food, and he can still be touched. We know the famous scene, again, with Thomas in John's Gospel, where Jesus shows him his hands, and Thomas is able to touch the marks from the nails. And it's this final point that I think gives us a mystery to ponder as we think about what it'll be like someday. That even with the imperishable, perfected, resurrected body of Christ, he still has scars. And so as we think about our own woundedness, or we think about the ways that our bodies are less than ideal now, which of those things are going to be healed and which are not? Maybe some of those things that have left a scar on us, whether it's physical or not, maybe that's still essential to who we are, and it's not something that we'll lose someday. And really the question is, especially again, when we look to Christ, what is most going to display the glory of God? For his disciples to see those marks in his hands, that was a sign of God's glory and the victory over death that the resurrection provided. And so whatever scars you feel like you have, whatever life has thrown at you, there may be parts of that stay with us. But again, it's because it's things that show the way that God's resurrection power has worked even in the midst of all of our pain and all of our suffering.